On the streets of Manila, hope had a number and a familiar logo. It was a promise, printed on the cap of a soft drink bottle, that could transform a life of hardship into one of comfort and fortune. It wasn't a question of if, but when. It was a national pastime, a collective dream, and for millions of Filipinos, it was the answer to every prayer about a better future. In the early months of 1992, Pepsi launched a promotion that would seize the imagination of an entire nation. The premise was simple: Number Fever. Each day, the winning number would be announced on the news, and if you had a bottle cap with that number, you won 1,000,000 pesos. 1,000,000 pesos in 1992 was not just a prize, it was a life-altering sum. It was enough to build a home, start a business, or provide an education for an entire family. This wasn't a gimmick, it was a chance to escape. The contest became a phenomenon. Families would hoard Pepsi bottle caps in jars and boxes, their homes becoming repositories of potential wealth. It was not uncommon for people to see people meticulously sifting through trash bins and public dumpsters, their hands stained with dirt as they searched for a winning cap. According to Pepsi's own estimates, half of the country's population was actively participating in the contest. The demand for Pepsi products skyrocketed, and the company's market share grew exponentially. The promotion was an unmitigated success, a masterclass in marketing that seemed to benefit everyone. Because of this overwhelming popularity, Pepsi decided to expand Number Fever for an additional 5 weeks. And that is where the story shifts from a feel-good contest to a national nightmare. Throughout the contest, Pepsi maintained complete control over the number of winners. A sophisticated, though flawed, computer program was used to seed 2 winning bottle caps into each bottling plant. The system was designed to ensure that there would only be 2 winners per day, keeping the total prize money within a manageable budget. But when they extended the contest, something went wrong. On the night of May 25, 1992, the computer program glitched, mixing up the codes that designated winning and non-winning numbers. At 6 p.m., as countless families gathered around their televisions, the Channel 2 Evening News announced the number: 349. What followed was a roar of celebration that swept across the Philippines. There should have been 2 winners. Instead, hundreds of thousands of people began to rejoice, their shouts of joy echoing through city streets and rural villages. You see, 349 had been designated as a non-winning number. Because of this, the bottling plants were free to print it on as many bottle caps as they wanted, and they had. Over 600,000 bottle caps with the number 349 were in circulation across the country. The number was so common that many people had more than one. The streets went wild that night. Strangers hugged in the streets, neighbors shared tears of joy, and a collective belief took hold that everyone's life was about to change for the better. The celebration was a fleeting, magnificent spectacle of a nation's shared hope. As the news of the massive number of winners spread, the euphoria turned to a desperate dash for redemption. Hundreds of jubilant winners rushed to the Pepsi factory, clutching their caps, expecting their checks. The flood of people became so overwhelming that the factory had to be shut down and guarded by police. The celebration was over. The company had to face the unthinkable reality: a colossal mistake had been made. In the dead of night, Pepsi executives met, their faces grim, as they attempted to calculate the potential cost. To honor every winning cap would have cost them over tens of billions of dollars, a sum that would have bankrupted the company's Philippine operations. They faced a choice: financial ruin or public fury. They chose to put the blame on the computer and made an offer that would only fuel the flames of discontent. They offered 500 pesos for each winning cap, a meager sum worth around $8. It was a humiliating 0.5% of the original prize. While some, weary and disillusioned, took the offer, the vast majority refused. Their anger now outweighed their hope. They didn't care about a computer error. To them, Pepsi was a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and it was their moral and legal obligation to honor the full prize amount.
It wasn't an offer of solace. It was an act of provocation. The 500 pesos, just around $8, was not a gesture of goodwill, but an insult, a cold dismissal of a dream that millions had held. For many, it was a slap in the face. They didn't care about a computer error. To them, Pepsi was a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and its only acceptable response was to honor the full prize. The hope that had filled the streets a few nights ago now curdled into a bitter, violent rage. The anger was immediate, raw, and widespread. It was an inferno that swept across the archipelago, igniting a war against a faceless corporation. The riots were not the uncoordinated chaos of a frustrated mob, but the focused fury of a betrayed people. Pepsi's bottling plants, once symbols of a potential future, became fortresses under siege. Molotov cocktails flew through windows, and bombs, crude and homemade, were thrown at Pepsi delivery trucks. The violence escalated beyond property damage. It claimed lives. 5 people were killed, and dozens were injured, caught in the crossfire of a contest gone wrong. In the months that followed, the conflict evolved from spontaneous outbursts to an organized and unrelenting campaign. The 349 Alliance was born, a coalition of angry winners who would not be silenced. They organized boycotts and rallies, turning public spaces into forums of protest. The local preacher, Del Fiero, emerged as their leader, a charismatic voice who galvanized thousands of claimants into a formidable legal and social force. He led the charge in a class-action lawsuit, suing Pepsi for over $400 million on behalf of the cheated winners. The battle had moved from the streets to the courts, but the violence still lingered. In February 1993, a bomb thrown at a Pepsi truck killed a schoolteacher and a 5-year-old child in Manila. But then, a new narrative began to circulate, a shocking twist that hinted at a much darker conspiracy. Police testimony and witness accounts started to emerge, suggesting that the violence against Pepsi was not entirely from the protesters. Reports claimed that Pepsi had hired mercenaries to infiltrate the protest groups and incite violence. The purpose? To frame the winners as terrorists, to delegitimize their claims in court, and to turn public opinion against them. It was a desperate and vicious move by a company trying to save itself from financial ruin. Pepsi's lawyers denied the allegations, and the story was never definitively proven, but the seed of doubt had been planted. For the winners, the fight was a long and arduous journey with few victories. In 1993, the court issued an arrest warrant for 9 Pepsi executives, a symbolic win for the alliance, but it was fleeting. Over the next year, most of the civil suits and criminal complaints were dismissed. The legal battle dragged on for more than a decade, a series of appeals and counter-appeals that wore down the plaintiffs. It came to a definitive end in 2006 when the Supreme Court of the Philippines officially closed the book on the remaining cases, ruling that Pepsi had not been negligent. The company only had to pay a small fine of 150,000 pesos. The dream of a better life, promised on a small bottle cap, had been systematically dismantled in the halls of justice. Even today, the trauma remains. The number fever incident is more than just a marketing mistake. It's a cautionary tale. To be 349'd became a local slang term for being duped or deceived. When asked for a statement years later, PepsiCo offered an apology, expressing regret for the pain and suffering their mistake caused. But for the people who had lived through it, that apology was too little, too late. The scars of that summer run deep.